Okay, so I need 2½ cups of flour?
Yes, sweetheart. 2 1/2 cups. Sifted, white, all-purpose flour.
Shit. I'm going to have to run to the grocery store then. Why don't you give me the rest of the ingredients first, Mom? That way I can pick up everything else I'm missing.
Sure thing, dear. Let me get my recipe box.
The elderly woman placed her phone on the counter and shuffled over to the dining room table. She shimmied a chair away from the table and started to drag it across the room towards the stove. With all of her moxie, she creaked her frail body into the standing position on the chair and opened the half cabinet above the stove. After moving some thick, ornate glasses to either side of the cabinet, she clasped her bony fingers around a small metal box. Crouching down in the chair, she brought herself to the relative safety of the sitting position and reclaimed the phone from the counter.
Are you still there, sweetie?
Yeah, Mom, I'm still here.
Okay, here it is.
She plucked a single card out of the crowded box.
2 1/2 cups of flour, 1 1/2 cups of sugar, and 2 tablespoons of cocoa. You'll also need baking soda, salt, eggs, buttermilk, oil, vanilla, and of course, you need red food coloring. Don't forget your icing. You still have the recipe for that, don't you?
It's okay, Mom. I'll just buy some frosting at the store.
Oh, okay, dear. That will work just fine.
So, how are things going with you and Dad? I haven't heard from either of you in a while.
Oh, we're doing just fine. Your father is down in the basement.
Yeah, I heard about Dad wanting to put you over at Shady Acres. Does he really think you need to be in one of those places? You seem more than capable of taking care of yourself. Well, I don't know. Maybe he was looking out for your well-being? Maybe he had some hottie seeing on the side?
Oh dear, I doubt that.
The elderly woman chuckled. Well, I'm glad he changed his mind. You don't belong in a home. You belong over there, giving me your world-famous red velvet cake recipe.
Oh dear, it's far from world-famous.
All right, Mom. I'm gonna run. I'll call you when I get back from the store. I love you.
I love you too, dear. I'll talk to you later.
The elderly woman traced the path of the coiled phone cord across the linoleum floor and replaced the handset back on its cradle. She made her way over to the archway at the apex of the basement stairs and started the slow descent.
Sorry about that, Henry,
she called out from the middle of the staircase.
It was our girl on the phone. She wanted a recipe.
She wearily strode down the last step to the basement floor. The smooth concrete made a swishing noise under her slippers as she walked over to the back corner of the small, dark cellar.
Geez, I can't see anything down here, Henry. Let me get us a lantern.
The woman dug around behind a tool shelf and found an electric lantern. Twisting the knob produced a small, sterile glow.
There we are. Now, where were we? Oh, that's right, the container.
She passed across the room to a small closet near the stairs. Reaching to the top shelf, she pulled down a thick, transparent bag and laid it on the floor to begin unfolding it.
What a great deal I got on this, huh, Henry? You remember that, don't you? From the commercial.
Henry was silent.
Well, I know I'm new at all this, but don't worry. I've put a lot of time and research into it. I think I have all of our bases covered.
After the bag was fully unfolded, she drug it across the concrete to a pale white mass heaped naked on the floor.
You know, Henry, if you put the vacuum cleaner in this slot here, you can pull out all of the air in the container. You are supposed to do that to save as much space as possible. It's also good to keep odor from building up inside. Pretty neat, huh? Well, anyway, let's get you all set up.
The old woman parted the opening on the top of the bag and began rolling the cold, limp bulk onto the top of the container.
Oh, you're chilly, Hank. I'm sorry about having to take away all of your clothes, but we can't have those turning up later on. The less you have with you, the better. Now, let's get your legs in there.
The woman began the lengthy process of wrapping the bag up and around the cadaver.
You know, Henry, she said while straining, poison is not always the best way to go. But it is still one of the better. We don't want any blood on the new wood floors upstairs, do we? Also, as it turns out, scientists have these new machines that can see where all the blood was on the floor, even after I've mopped. We don't want that, do we?
She grasped at the zipper and started pulling it away from her, shuffling forward step by step until the bag was closed. She opened the valve on the side of the bag and attached the end of the vacuum conveniently placed next to her inside of it. When it was turned on, the bag began to compress, eventually clinging tight to her betrothed.
There we are. Now I bet you're wondering about those darn stairs. Well, I have already thought about that. I went ahead and moved the Caprice over to the side drive, right next to the side door. I'll just need to get you right into the trunk.
The bag emitted a smooth, tinny hiss as it was dragged across the floor to the side door. The woman moiled to the point of injury until she had the bag waiting right by the door.
Phew! Well, that took a lot more out of me than I thought it would. Let's have a rest, and I'll go upstairs to get the bag I've packed. It has all of the things we might possibly need. Some meat wrapped up in saran wrap, a length of rope, a flashlight, and of course some air freshener just in case something goes wrong. I'll go get that. You just wait right here.
The woman grabbed the bag out of her bedroom and started making her way through the kitchen when the phone rang. She picked up the powder blue receiver from the wall, still warm from its last use. Hey, Mom, what type of flour should I get? There's a whole bunch of different types here.
Get the King Arthur brand. It always sifts out the best, sweetie.
Okay. I'll call you back when I get home if I need help.
Okay. I'm glad you said that, darling. We need to bring the cell phone with us.
You're going out?
Well, yes, sweetheart. Just call me on the cellular phone. Do you have the phone number for it?
Yeah, I do. Okay, Ma, I gotta run. I'll call your cell.
Okay, Pumpkin. I'll talk to you later.
She slid back into her room and looked in the top drawer of her bedside table for her phone. She opened it up and examined the oversized buttons, almost to see if they were still there. She made her way back down the stairs.
Henry, can you believe I almost forgot the phone? Boy, I can be scatterbrained at times, can't I? Remember when we had that talk about how I sometimes forgot things? And you thought it would be a good idea for me to go to that place so people could help me get better? Oh, remember the laugh we had? It was such a riot. Pulling me out of the house so I can go live at that healthcare house or whatever it's called. How preposterous! I need to be here to give our daughter recipes and cooking tips and advice for proper gardening. You know that, so that's how I knew you were joking. Oh, Hank, always pulling my leg. Well, anyways, I have the car keys, so I'll go pop the trunk for you.
The woman walked out of the side door to her awaiting car and opened the trunk.
See, Henry? I already have the trunk lined with a blanket. You have to be prepared, you know. Now we don't have to worry about anything getting on the inside of the trunk that the scientist people could find. Then it would take me away from our little angel, and we can't have that, can we?
The woman propped the bag up against the back of the car and heaved upward until the heavier part toppled into the trunk. She let out a light shriek of success and swung the lighter half in.
See, Henry? We did it. No problem. Bet you're glad you married such a clever girl.
She smiled and winked at the semi-transparent bag.
I'll see you in just a minute, darling.
She pushed down on the lid of the trunk until it clicked closed and scurried back inside to fetch the lantern. When she got back to the car, she started it and turned on the headlights, illuminating the Florida night. She put the car in gear and drove off. The next time the trunk opened, it was facing a steep embankment with a marsh at the bottom. The woman smiled into the trunk.
Hi, darling. We're here. I drove nice and slow the whole way. I even made sure to stick to the back roads and everything. We don't want anyone seeing us out here this late at night. We don't want anyone getting suspicious, especially after we've come so far. Well, it wasn't too long of a drive, but it was hard getting through the woods. I don't think you've ever been here. This is the back part of the property that has been on the market on the other side of town. Oh, you remember the Kleinworths that lived next door? Well, this seemed like the best spot. No one would ever come back here. So you don't have to worry about anyone bothering you.
She had went into the bag she had brought with her and pulled out the chunks of meat that she had wrapped up and unzipped the bag all the way and placed them inside.
This should help speed things along. We don't want to drag this out too much, do we?
She pulled the bag up to the edge of the trunk.
Are you ready?
Henry's gnarled, twisted face peered back at her, motionless.
Well, away we go then, dear. I love you.
She nudged the bag, and it tumbled out of the back and hit the moist ground with a wet thwack. The momentum sent it slowly rolling down the steep hill. It picked up speed until it splashed into the awaiting bog. The woman calmly waved at the bag as she sat on the back of the car, waiting. The thrashing sound of something moving through the water could be heard. The woman's cell phone rang.
Hello?
Hey, Mom. I think I'm just about finished.
Me too, dear. Tell me, did you clean up after yourself?
Of course, Mom.
Good. You have to make sure you keep everything cleaned up. You can't just leave things around for someone to stumble across. You also need to remember to retrieve the container and clean that up, too. We don't want anyone finding that, do we?
Mom, what are you talking about? You mean the cake pan?
Red is a pesky color to clean up. It might be best to just get rid of it when we're done.
Well, I can't afford to be throwing away good cake pans, Mom. But hey, I'm not sure if I did this right. It looks so pale on the outside, but the inside is bright red. Is it supposed to be? The old woman stared blankly at the water. The thrashing grew louder and more violent. Mom, are you there?
Oh, sorry, sweetheart. Yes, we did it right. It is always bright red on the inside. It might startle you at first because it looks unnatural, but it is right.
Okay, Mom. We're gonna go ahead and dig in right now. I love you. Thanks for everything.
I love you too. One more thing, sweetie.
What's that? The old woman gazed vacantly at the thrashing in the crimson swirl in the water, pale chunks rising to the surface and disappearing again.
Make sure they eat every last bite.